Welcome. We are now in episode 3, conversation number 3, continuing with my beloved mother, and really grateful to have you. Last episode, we talked about coming to terms with things, seeing the separation, the disconnect, working through that, and what that has been like. And today, the conversation is going to turn a little bit more to our family culture. And because in my perspective, I think we have one of the strongest family cultures as far as unity, love, and acceptance, when we all have quite a different range of opinions on, not even just on religion. So I think talking through how we've gotten there, because it hasn't always been like this. I've heard multiple comments from in-laws, people that have married into our family, that have talked about this idea or this feeling that, man, there's just such a feeling of acceptance, and you guys just really talk about things and listen to each other. And that's been really cool for me to experience and hear that side of things. So today we're going to talk about, what does that look like? What are some of the things that have been helpful? What have we done? So I'm going to start off by just asking the question to you, Mom. What are some of the, like, more kind of the checklist items, as far as, maybe books that you've read or things that you have done that have allowed you to feel more ability to feel united, or to really work through things in the family as far as differences?
Yeah, so interestingly, one book that just was huge for me was the book by Tom Christofferson. He's a brother to Elder D. Todd Christofferson. The title is We May Be One, a Gay Mormon's Perspective on Faith and Family. And I read this book, and through what he wrote about, Tom really helped me see that a family can really accept and love unconditionally people in the family who choose a different path than the family's religious tradition. And in his case, it was his gay relationship. And in fact, I was talking to this first son about Tom's experience, and that Tom didn't feel like he fit in anywhere. He didn't fit in the church. He didn't fit in out in the world with his higher values, and he felt very alone because he just didn't have a place. And this child just started to sob. He said that's how he felt. And it just broke my heart. I just felt like it. And so from reading this experience of Tom, and then this opened up to how my son felt, that he felt like he couldn't be a part of the church, but he didn't have a place to fit in anywhere because he didn't want to go drinking, be immoral, he just didn't want that lifestyle. And so that was I immediately just felt a deeper compassion for what he was going through, and then in subsequent children with their experiences. It is a painful process, and I understand that with a lot of people who leave the church. It's not, in most cases, it's not just a quick decision. It comes over lots of times years of trying to find answers and trying to figure things out. Anyway, so that book helped me a lot. And the other, oh
Can I
yeah,
interrupt real quick?
you bet.
Um, so I think this touches on a point that we talked about last time, as far as sometimes parents or family members feel like if they are still loving and accepting of a child or someone that lives a different lifestyle that's not conducive with the principles of the church, they feel like they are giving approval of those acts or of that way of living. And I think this book was such a great example or provided ways where that is not the case. So I'm curious, I would love to hear from your perspective. Is there anything from the book that you can say, oh, this was a really good example of, and somewhere where they still showed love and acceptance of Tom and his lifestyle, and they didn't view that as being accepting, or that they had the same beliefs. And then the follow-up question will just be, have you found any ways that you have experienced that in our family?
Yes. So, a couple of things. One, I remember Tom talking about his dad coming out to visit, and Tom was married to his partner. And anyway, the dad went out to visit, and um, well, maybe it was, anyway, I can't remember the details, but they were visiting. And the father, of course, is a very active member of the church and doesn't drink. And Tom was drinking wine and some alcohol. And so the father said, "Well, Tom, tell me what it is about wine that people just love it so much, and there's just such an experience, emotional experience tied to trying different kinds of wines, and what do you look for?" And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, "Oh, I would never have thought of being curious about something that I naturally would not be interested in." But he showed an interest in what was important to his son. Um, Also the family. So this would have been, I mean, Tom is from my generation, and his brothers. And so for their parents to handle this situation, because I'm sure back 40 years ago, it would not have been accepted like it is today. And for them, these parents to just have that attitude and that love. And they so another situation was Tom and his partner were coming from New York to stay in Utah with the family, and they were going to stay in the parents' home. And Tom told how he was just so worried. He didn't know how would his mom make them have separate rooms. And he didn't ask beforehand. I guess he just didn't want to confront her with the situation. But he said when they got there, she just nonchalantly said, "Okay, your room is in the corner in the basement, and you'll find towels." Da, 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 da. Just acceptance, and she didn't make it awkward. And he said that was so huge. That was just huge. And then one more thing I remember was, as the family was gathering, there were some of the teenage boys or nephews of Tom who made a um, a rude comment about Tom and his partner. And Tom's mother, pulled them aside lovingly, and she said, "There will be no talk like that in this house. Your Uncle Tom and his partner are very much loved, and we will show respect and love for them." And anyway, so those are three things that stand out to me now. And then you asked about in our family situation. So we have a child who's living with a partner. They're not married. And so, as we've had family gatherings, I've made the decision, your dad and I made the decision that we would have them share a room and just not make a big deal out of it. And at first, when I thought of that, that was hard because I don't I don't agree with that, but at the same time, I didn't want to, again, didn't want him to feel ostracized, or I just didn't want that to affect our relationship. So I've come a long way in how I view dealing with some of these situations, cuz 10 years ago I would never have accepted doing that, something like that. So,
Yeah, I love that. I think the one thing that I want to point out is, you talk about unconditional love, and then when you think of unconditional love, it means showing love regardless. And or I mean, you can love someone without showing it, right? So it's more an internal thing. Only you can know, like, are you loving this person unconditionally? The point that I want to make is that unconditional love is not, in my perspective, it's not a one-time decision and then forever after that you just always are going to love and accept that person. Unconditional love is practice. It's something that we go throughout every day with ourselves, unconditionally loving and accepting ourselves, our family members, people around us. And it's practice. There are times when it's going to be challenging, and so I think you're a good example of that, where there are times where it's not quite clear what does unconditional love look like in this situation, and again, to just highlight the differences, as when you're raising your children, it's your job to teach them what you believe is right and wrong, and help them to make decisions, when appropriate, give them consequences. And that's the foundation for your relationship. And then they grow up and they're independent and make decisions on their own. It's challenging to just switch. It's not like, it's just like, okay, it's been like this forever, and now all of a sudden, boom, we're gonna have a different relationship now. It takes practice, to be accepting and to allow others to make decisions, to know when do I voice my opinion, and let them know how do I do it respectfully. So it's a lot of different things to maneuver, and so I want to avoid the idea or the perspective that, for people listening, that it's just this easy transition. It's messy sometimes. It's difficult. It's challenging. And so the point is not to never have those challenges. It's to continue to commit to love and acceptance.
right. Yeah. I want to point out, I know we talked about my parents in the first episode, but I have had a nephew who was in jail and then in prison for some years. And aside from his parents, the person who kept in contact with him the most was my dad. And my dad would send him letters of encouragement and love. And that was such a great example to me, that he would reach out to this grandson who was really struggling. So,
That This is a quick side note, but it reminds me. Yesterday, we were at an event in Phoenix and listened to a man speak. He's got a long beard and dreadlocks that go down to his knees. And when he was younger, I think he was 18 or 19, he went to jail. His mom came and bailed him out of jail, and he was embarrassed. But at the same time, he was thinking, how do I not get caught next time? Like, all these thoughts going through his mind. His mom's driving. They're not talking. He doesn't know where they're going. And then he realizes that his mom's driving out to his grandma's family farm. And um, as she pulls up, his grandma, all of his aunts and uncles and cousins are on the porch. They've made a big sign that says "Welcome home." He said he didn't even want to get out of the car, uh, and but his grandma came to him, and He said the way that she was talking to him was like he was the most respected man on the planet. That if he wanted to, he could become the president of the United States. He used words like that, and so I think that's such a great example. It reminded Jenny and I of the prodigal son. And anyway, so that's a bit of a tangent, and I'll put his story in the notes of this episode. If anyone, he did like a 3-hour podcast talking about his life and what that was like. His name is Matt Clemmer, and now he's just unbelievably committed to love across the board. So, so tell me about. There was another book that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, so there was a book that was recommended to me by our stake president. I was stake relief study president at the time, and he gave these books to all the ward relief study presidents, elders quorum presidents, and bishops, and the book's called Bridges: Ministering to Those Who Question by David B. Osler. And my dad and I read this book together, and this book has been.
Just to
Oh, go
clarify,
ahead.
you and your husband. It almost sounded
Yes.
like you said you and your dad, but
No.
you
Yeah.
and dad read the book
Yes.
together.
Yes. So I'll just refer to him as Scott from now on. So Scott
Yeah.
and I read this book, and it really opened my eyes in how to be more compassionate and understanding and non-judgmental. And I realized reading this book, which was after we had had our first child come to us, but I realized that I had made a lot of mistakes with him. And like I said, I thought if he prayed more, studied more, fasted more, the questions would be resolved, and it just isn't that easy. And he had done all that. The book Bridges brought out questions that I could ask, like, what led you to quit going to church, and what do you believe now, and tell me more. And the author also counseled to just give heartfelt support. Just say, I love you. I will just listen. I won't preach. I won't give advice or tell you you're wrong. I will just listen. And I mean, of course, this son who I felt like I handled things all wrong. He has forgiven me. He understands, but I just felt like it's so much. They're just from a parent's point of view or a sibling, a friend, just to have the willingness to just be open and listen and express love. The author really helped me to humble myself more, to rely more on the Spirit, and to feel and show love more freely. And I mean, that book just really opened my eyes, but also gave specific things to do when someone comes to you with questions or feeling these struggles. Yeah, I wish I'd read it earlier, but we just do the best we can and then move on and grow. So
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people talk about how great that book is as far as trying to understand the other side of the equation, understanding people that have made the decision to leave or those that have a lot of questions. And I do think, from my perspective, in talking to members that are still in the church, it does sound like the church is more open or more accepting of people asking challenging questions and having a little bit more of a supportive environment. Um, and I think that's great. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the coming years and how the church continues to evolve and finding the line between keeping the standards and beliefs while being accepting of people.
right. Yeah.
So let's talk about. I want to talk about in our family how we've kind of maneuvered through this, because there was for a period of time it was a little bit like, we were all kind of aware of, okay, well, so and so isn't in the church, so and so is, so like, but not, and maybe like some kind of side discussions individually between people, but not something talked about in the open. And I, as we were going through some of our own questions and our own struggles, I'm the type of person that I really enjoy open and honest conversations, even when I don't agree or believe. And I feel like um, I really that's one huge thing that I developed on my mission, was learning to listen to other people that have different opinions and different beliefs, and find a way to have peaceful conversation. And it was probably the greatest skill that I developed, and it's played into my career and very much who I am as a person. And I just love open, honest conversation. So as we were kind of going through this, I kind of started to feel a little bit of the, I don't know, awkwardness, or that it was a little bit of a taboo subject. And I thought, man, I really would like to change this if it would be possible. And so I talked to you and dad about, at our next like family reunion, family gathering, of having a conversation with all of us siblings and you and dad, and just kind of talking about, like, okay, here's where we're at. How do we want to handle things? How do we want to maneuver? Is it something that we want to be as something that can be discussed and listen to each other, or do we feel like it would be better to keep it as a taboo subject and not really have it discussed in the open? So I would love to hear your side of things in that conversation. What did it feel like from your perspective in that conversation as a family?
So, one thing that I thought was huge was just that it came from you as the oldest child. It wasn't from me or your dad. It was from you as a child, and then just kind of calling us all together and just saying, okay, we've got differences of opinions, we have different perspectives, different ideas of life in general, and how what can we do to make keep this from dividing us, because we want to stay united and we want to be supportive of each other. And so we talked a little bit about just being open and being willing to listen to each other's ideas on both sides, and to show respect for those differing opinions, and to to really not judge and or argue or come down on anyone because of their views, but to be open and loving. And so that was just such an amazing experience. And because of that, our daughter who had left the church, um, we had felt like it was kind of a taboo subject with her. So we had gone camping, and we drove up the canyon further, and we found a spot off the side of the road. So this is another daughter who is active, the inactive daughter, and then my husband and me. And we went, took some lawn chairs, and we just went out in the middle of this wooded area. It was just beautiful. And we had told her before. We said we just really want to talk and see where you're coming from. And so we went there, and she was just able to express her feelings, her perspective on things, why she had chosen to leave the church. And it just opened things up, made things so much more comfortable, and there were tears and there was laughing, and um but it was so unifying to be able to just talk openly like that. And since then our relationship has just been even better. So, and that came about because of the discussion we had as a family that you directed.
So in that example, in that conversation, what what went well and what did you feel like was easy, and what were there challenges during it? Like did you experience feelings of defensiveness at times, or did you feel like it was easy to just sit and listen?
Maybe a little bit, but we shared feelings on both sides. I was worried that she might feel kind of what's the word? Anyway, she was one against three of us, but it wasn't that way at all. And I think each of the three of us were able to express support for her in what she was experiencing. I think if there was any defensiveness, it I was able to express my attitude towards the subject, but overall, I don't think there was a lot of that. I think it was mostly, okay, yeah, I can see why that would be hard. Um, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I remember from that conversation as a family was there was a family member at that point that voiced an opinion and said, "Well, I've had some of those conversations, and you know, I've felt criticized, and I don't know if this is worth talking about. Like, sometimes this feels like it hurts the relationship." And I we talked through that, and I said, I understand that, and this is part of why we're having the conversation, because we can choose to just avoid the topic, and if that's what everyone decides, I'm okay with that. I can accept that. It's not my choice, but it is something that I can accept, and I can live with. And I think I just kind of voiced, if we choose to go down this road, I said, this is my opinion. If we choose to go down this road where we start to have some more of these conversations and allow it to unfold, um, there are times that we will step on each other's toes. There are
Mhm.
times that we will make mistakes. We may have to backtrack. We may have to apologize. We may have to try and listen harder to each other. And it's not going to be the easy road. But I do think that if we are willing to do this, that it will lead to deeper relationships and more love and acceptance.
Yeah.
And that's that's how that's a lot of what my experience in life has been with choosing to have difficult conversations and finding this balance of allowing myself to be able to express my beliefs and just be who I am, and then also allow that for the other person across from me as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a great experience. In fact, you've shared a book with me that was written by a church member for church members, and that really impressed me that you would seek out a book that you knew would be um, that would speak to me, um, that you would be willing to go to that effort. That's huge. That's just, yeah, I think it's amazing how we can still work through things. Yeah.
Thank you. I think part of the way that I view it, I've shared it before, but I almost view things as the a language. We all kind of speak different languages. We're all speaking English, but there's certain ideas and the ways that we see the world, and that can be our language. And so for a lot, professionally, I work as a coach for specifically dentists. And so much of what I have learned over the years is that if I can learn and ask the questions, how does this person see the world? Why do they see the world this way? That's me learning their language. And then if I can really kind of get that down, then I have an idea, and the idea presents itself in my language, and I have to translate that to this other person's language and then present it in that way. And so, because in your situation, I know that the church is your language, so to speak. I know that there's certain ideas and principles that apply across the board. There's universal principles that people believe in, regardless of the religion or political view, and or the way that we view life. And so sometimes if you can translate those ideas into that language, it can allow that to resonate with that person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Really try to see the other person's try to understand and see what the other person's thinking and how they're feeling. That makes an enormous difference.
Which I think leads to a point that you have talked about before, and I want you to talk about this a little bit. I've heard you say, "Listen, listen again." Tell me about that in some conversations where you have pushed yourself to do that.
Yeah, there have been times I've felt like I wanted to maybe say something, but felt that it was better to just sit back and just try to understand. And listening is huge because um I mean, when we're struggling and going through something, you don't want to say one thing and then have the other person respond and talk for 5 minutes. And uh in that situation you feel like, "Oh, they have no idea where I'm coming from and they're just spouting off whatever they want to tell me." But so listening is really really important. And not just to try to understand the point of view, but the feelings that are behind that point of view, and then to ask questions to improve your understanding. And yeah, there's several other things that I especially learned from that book, Bridges, that really helped me. So that was one of them.
Yeah, I love that point. I'm reading a book right now that's completely just about listening, and in the beginning, she just talks about, like, when is the last time that you felt like someone sat across from you and they really heard what you were saying. And it's a very rare sadly, it's a very rare experience in our society. So I think,
Mhm.
listening is not just being silent and giving a place or space for the other person to talk, but it's what you're talking about. It's asking the questions, trying to really understand where they're coming from, what are the emotions there, because we can all resonate with the emotions, whether or not we resonate with the idea or the belief.
Right, right. And then just try not to judge, because when we make those judgments, those will come out in even our body language. Um and then don't speak poorly about them to other people. That's really important too. And that includes your other children, and help others understand how difficult it is to make that decision. I think that's because that is a part of it. It's really hard. So yeah.
Let's see. I was gonna say something, but I don't remember what it was now. I was too focused on listening.
Good for you.
um, yeah, I don't remember it. So I'll just move on to the next question that I had. So, are there still times that you feel defensive or feel like you have to kind of bite your tongue in some way when conversations are being had?
Um, Once in a while, but not very often. There was one occasion at a family gathering um where there was a conversation going on that was directly and completely opposed to what I believed, and I felt like the two people were kind of joking, but kind of pushing this opinion on me. And I said, nope, that is not true. That is not true. So I feel like there are situations where I can stand up for what I believe in, um and that time I didn't feel anger, but I felt like, no, I am sure that that is that's not a true thing. So,
Yeah, and I think again, I think there's times, like I said, we're going to step on each other's toes. There's times when we may not think of something being bothersome or offensive to someone else, and then we realize that it is. We may have to have challenging conversations. We may have to apologize and those kinds of things. And then there's definitely times there are times that I can feel my ego come out. I'm in a conversation and I can feel it when I start really feeling like I'm on the pulpit or I'm on, on some kind of a pedestal and I'm trying to convince someone that they are not right and that they should listen to my point of view. That's when there's just this flag that goes up that's like, okay, that's the ego coming out, and that's not how I want. It's not it's not how I want other people to experience me, but even more so, it's not how I want to experience being around other people. I don't
right,
enjoy that feeling of the ego and like feeling this conflict that I have to convince this other person. I really
right,
my experience of conversations is so much better when I can voice that, yeah, this is how I view it and this is why. How do you view it, and why? Or someone else views, states an opinion or a view, and I can say, tell me tell me more, or can you expand on this part? This is the part that I don't understand as much about, or it doesn't like click for me. those
right,
those that's so much more enjoyable from my side of the experience. And so over time, as I've gotten a little bit better at recognizing uh, the ego, my 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 own experience of relationships continues to improve.
right. And I think in general, that's a very good bit of advice, because when we start thinking, my way is the better way, I'm smarter than you in whatever situation, it doesn't even have to be about religion, but anytime we're coming across, that's our motivation in telling things, then yeah, that's a huge sign that we need to back off. And yeah, there's and back with like the gospel and the church, you don't need to feel like you have to change your own standards or values. Our beliefs are known to each other, and we don't expect each other to change. Um, but like you said before, if we're uncomfortable with a situation or a topic, I mean, it's best to just talk to the person alone and um, work it out so there's not embarrassment in front of a lot of people. But yeah, being able to talk about the hard things at times and just work things through, being open.
So I want to wrap things up, and one thing that I want to voice is that this is something that I feel like our family has done pretty well at learning over time. There has been struggles there have been challenges that we've had to maneuver, but I'm incredibly proud of where we're at and our ability to love and accept each other. But for those listening, I I know that this is something that probably everyone would choose to have in their family. If they could snap their fingers and make it work, this is a great way to have good relationships. But we can only control ourselves, and there are certain people that may be very good at being open-minded and working through this, but the rest of their family is maybe more hesitant or resistant or dealing with their own insecurities, that this is very challenging and not something that they feel capable of working through. So some people may be listening and think, oh, I can make this happen in my family. And what I would say is, just work on yourself. Just try and make this work for you. You focus on listening to other people, asking questions, being open and loving and accepting, and do it to create your own culture in your mind. And eventually, hopefully that's what leads to some changes in others. But if not, you should be able to see results in just the way that you personally experience your family or relationships around you. So, with that being said, Mom, maybe you can wrap things up for us and just talk about, we've talked through a lot of the struggles, and at the beginning, I talked a little bit about my view of our family culture, and I would love to hear your perspective with taking everything into account that we've talked about.
Yeah, so I really feel like our family is closer than ever, and that because we've developed this attitude of mutual respect and love and acceptance, that we really do have good times together. And um like you said, several of our in-law children have talked about how difficult it is with their families, and maybe being preached at, or people looking down on them or judging them. But and I mean, even with that, our family is not perfect, and yeah, we've had to have some difficult conversations. But I'm grateful that we've been able to establish this in our family, and we're able to share uplifting quotes and thoughts and books and scriptures. Um, and we even talk about memories of growing up in the church, different hymns and stories about people in the ward, different experiences in the church. Just because it was part of the growing up years. And so, yeah, we laugh together, we cry together, and we really are there for each other more than ever before. So it's just been a really neat experience. That because um I had at the very beginning of all this, I thought, oh, now we won't be able to share so many things together, but there's so much that we can share. And we have a wonderful family. So thanks, Derek, this has been great.
Yeah, thank you. And again, for everyone listening, I just want to acknowledge my mom. This is something that takes a lot of people contributing, being willing to talk through, and it's been really cool for me to see you, someone who is very firm and committed in your faith, to learn to navigate things, to be open and accepting while uncompromising on your own personal standards. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I'm grateful for your example. And it adds to my dedication and commitment in my own life to hold to the things that I believe. So I love you, and I'm so grateful and so appreciative to you being willing to have this open public conversation, and hope that this is able to help a lot of people to listen and understand each other more.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Love you too, and thank you for this great opportunity. It's been wonderful.
It has.